Hey, what's going on? So today I want to show you how to take one photo, such as this one, and blend it together with itself to make one photo that's properly exposed for the foreground and properly exposed for the sky. So let's jump on over to Lightroom and get that done. So we are now just in Lightroom, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, how to blend this photo in with itself to make a properly exposed photo. So start by removing chromatic aberration, get rid of enable profile corrections. You can see how it just brings the warp out of the photo a little bit. I use Sigma 17-50 lens. So I'll come down, I'll start by doing the blue primary, drag that all the way up. You can see how it brings out the yellows and the oranges. So now let's go ahead and bring down some highlights, bring up the shadows. So you just move my white point. Biggest thing is you want to make sure you stay off this edge over here, because once you cross that edge, you basically have exposed highlights that there's no data in them. So there's no point going that far. So you can go get close to it, but just don't cross. Let's bring the blacks down. Let me bring a little bit of vibrance. Okay, so from here, now we want to work on just the sky. So what we're going to do is, so there's a couple options. So on this one, let's say we want to do just a graduated filter, you drag it down. Well, you can see how it just darkens all the trees and everything, and you just don't want that. But because it's, let's go ahead and delete that. So with this V here, it's just not something you can really use. If it was a flat horizon, sure, it works great, but it just doesn't work in this instance. So let's go ahead and close this out. So what we're going to do is you right click, create virtual copy. And now you have the same photo, but just a copy of it. So on this one, now we can do just the sky. So let's go ahead and bring our shadows down. Let's bring the exposure down. Definitely bring the whites down. Something right around in there, I think. We can get rid of the vibrance. So that's looking pretty good. So you zoom in and it's just so much darker. It just looks better than that one. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and highlight both of them. Either command click or shift click. Brings them up. Then you edit in. Open as layers in Photoshop. So then once Photoshop opens up, I can show you what I do to do this. So now, like I said, I like to have the dark photo on top. Let's just drag it up, put it up there. It's just personal preference. So from here, we'll go to the Channels tab, and then we'll start out by finding which channel has the best, basically light to dark gradients there. So the blue channel is pretty good. Let's try the green. Yeah, green, you can see it's getting a lot lighter. Let's try the red, even brighter. So let's go back to the blue. Here, and now from here, let's go ahead and make a copy of it. So just drag it down to the little square there, makes a copy. Then I go Command M, and that brings up the curves adjustment. And then let's go ahead and drop our shadows and our darks. And we'll bring up our highlights as much as we can. Something similar to that. Let's see, I don't like the way it darkened that sky. But this is pretty close. What we can do here is just click OK. And now we hit the B for the brush tool. And come up here to Overlay. Make sure you're on the white. You can see here. Let's increase our brush size. Why is it not increasing? I don't know. We'll just go up to here. Actually, just bring up our opacity. Bring up the size. Oh, there we go. Now from here, if you just brush on it, it'll just get rid of all the gray. And so being that it's on overlay mode, you don't have to worry about it crossing any of the lines here, because that's just what the overlay does. If you go on normal, and then it'll just blast all this black into white, or the opposite if you have black here. So from here, let's go ahead and load this as a selection. So you click that one there. You can see I got the marching ants all around it. Then we'll add all our channels again, hit the layers. Then we can hit the add layer mask tab button. And then there you go. Now you have your dark sky mixed in with your lighter foreground. Then if you zoom in, you can see So you can see all this little fringing going on. Let's bring our brush way down. Let's just go to the hand tool. See all the little fringing going on here? It is one thing you have to be concerned with. So you can do is, so you're on the mask over here, come over here to your properties, and you just drag the feather up a little ways. You can see it's changing our fringing. You know, it gets worse and worse the higher up you go. So you just bring it in just a little bit. So we're at what, 1.8 pixels, 1.6. Just kind of bring it up. You know, some of it is chromatic aberration, didn't quite get rid of all of it. So I'll show you a little trick that I do to get rid of that. So that's looking pretty good. Nothing too major. This tree's still a little bit weird, but that's all right. We'll try and fix that later. And then up here as well. But a lot of that's, if you zoom in, you can see it's kind of like the chromatic aberration. It's got the blue and the pink hue to it. So we'll get rid of that in a few minutes. Let's go Command 0, go back out. And from here, we can just do, well, okay, so one advantage to having this layer mask here too, with just that, we can do, let's say we want to do a curves adjustment. Okay, so right now, if I adjust it, see, it adjusts the whole photo, right? Let's drag that over here. But if I option, click on this and drag it up to there, it puts the mask onto the curves layer. And then we can actually Command I and invert it. So now, when we come back over to here, we're changing strictly the foreground and not the sky. So there's all kinds of options you can do with that, but I don't think we're going to use that today. But I think that's looking pretty good. So from here, let's go ahead and make another layer. So we'll Option Command Shift E brings up another layer. And then in the previous video I showed you, I used this Raya Pro. It's a pretty cool program. It does a lot. It has a lot of one-click features that would take you multiple steps in Photoshop. It's like if you want to go to enhance, and like, well, you know, I want it kind of really fall colors because everything's green. You can just kind of come around with colors, autumn colors. One click, boom, done. You know, of course this one's a little too much just because of, you know, the colors are already in, but you can always just drop the opacity down. You know, really, you can see that really helped it right there. It just kind of brings in a little more color, but we're not going to deal with that. So what we want to do is come over to the Finish tab and hit Clean CA, which means Clean Chromatic Aberration. So now our brush, as we zoom in here, you can see all these little pinks and blues in there. So let's go ahead and turn this back to normal. Then we'll drop the opacity down to like 45. Make our brush a little bit smaller. Then you just go in and just start brushing. And you can see how all the pinks and blues are just disappearing. So it makes it really nice. Go ahead and bring the opacity up just a little bit more. And just kind of brush around where you can see, especially like this tree here. You see as we brush around, it all kind of goes away. It looks a little more natural. Yeah, like around here it's pretty bad, but just one little click and drag the mouse and it just goes away. It is really slick. It works really well for astro stuff because a lot of my stars end up with chromatic aberration around them. So I'll drag down over to this side. You can see it's all over these trees as well. So you just kind of brush along. And that's looking pretty good. Here we'll zoom back out. And I think we're pretty good on that. So now from here, let's make another layer. So it's Alt Command Shift E again, because you need this layer here. That way I can go into Filters and open it up into Color Effects Pro 4. And then we can make some adjustments further. Okay, Color Effects Pro 4 is opened up. Right now it's on Pro Contrast. You see the effects are pretty small right now. So we want to add a filter. Let's go over to tonal contrast. These are way too high, just default numbers. So we drop that 10, 15, 10, bring this to 0. And the tonal contrast will actually bring out a little more detail in it. However, it does add noise, and so you can see the change. But you don't want that noise in the sky. So what we're going to do is hit the minus button, and then come up here, and let's drop the, actually make the brush a little bit bigger, right about there. Then you hit Option and click on the center button, and then you can it just makes more copies as you just drag around. So we can just do this, kind of bring it all around. Let's make this one smaller so we can get down into here a little bit more. Okay, so from there, actually I'll put one right there as well. From there, if you open up the controls, you can see how they all got, you can see all your control points that you've added. So if you click this square button here, you can see what you're masking off. And so that's what we want. Now it's just all down in the foreground. So that looks pretty good. Go ahead and turn those off. Let's go ahead and bring those back up. And from here, let's go ahead and add another filter. And I personally like the skylight filter. See, it does add quite a bit of red though, or magenta. So let's bring that down. And you can see it's still in the sky. So let's do the same thing. Hit the minus. And then just make another one. Then just start dragging it around. You can see how that's actually changing the sky back to kind of a bluish gray color. So that's really what we want. And then same thing, if you come over, hit the square, you can see where it's masked off, so it's looking pretty good. I'll close that, and I think that looks pretty good. You can see where we started and where we finished up. Let's go ahead and hit OK, and it'll save it and open itself back up as another layer. Okay, now we are back. Everything's in Photoshop. It looks a lot better. You can see before and after. And the nice thing about doing the Nik software, the Color Effects Pro 4 in Photoshop, is if you do it and then you're like, well, I think it's a little too much, you can just drop the opacity down. You can see it, see how it changes there. But I don't think I went overboard. But you know, it is personal preference. So if you think it's overboard, then you know, just drop the opacity down. You can be done with it. So from here, let's go ahead. Actually, let's zoom in, kind of check around. I think we're pretty good. There is a little bit of fringing here and there, but I'll show you how to fix that in another video. It doesn't take too much time, but for the sake of keeping the video short, I think we'll save it for next one. So Command 0 to bring that back out. And then you can see down here, we started out with a 102.5 megabyte file, and we are now at 681.7 by adding all these layers. So let's go ahead and get rid of all those layers. So we'll go to Layer, Flatten Image, and it puts it all just in one layer. We're down to 136.6 megabytes. So it's much easier to work with, much smaller file. So let's go ahead and close this out, go ahead and save it, and then it will open itself back up into Lightroom. And from here, we can actually double process it. So let's go ahead and bring the highlights down a little bit, darken the sky just a little bit. But one thing you do have to be careful with when you're doing this is that the sky can never be darker than the foreground. You know, if you have a reflection, it's just not the way it works in nature. So let's go ahead and add a brush. It'll darken. Just kind of darken this a little bit, kind of make it match the sky a little more. Do a little bit more. And whenever you use the brush, especially with something like this, make sure you're on auto mask. It actually does a pretty good job of masking what needs to be done. So we can go ahead and just kind of check around. Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and call that done. I'll zoom back out. So you can see now the foreground and the sky match a little better. So I think from there, we can just maybe a little bit more vibrant, just kind of bring out the colors a little bit more. Then we can scroll down, we can do blue primary again, just a touch. Don't want to go too much, make it oversaturated. Then we'll come up, let's go ahead and dehaze it a little bit. And you can see it'll darken the sky a little bit more, just kind of go too much, it gets out of control. But just a little bit, just to kind of bring a little bit of contrast in. I'll go ahead and vignette it just to kind of close it in. And then I think we're good. So now you know one way to blend exposures together if you haven't bracketed your exposures, which is still the same process if you're using brackets. If not, you just, like I said, make a virtual copy and then just make one photo for the ground, one photo for the sky, and just blend them together in Photoshop. And if you liked the video, go ahead and hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, thanks for watching.